Hello, welcome to my talk on It's Only a CGI Model, Arthurian Movies of the 21st Century. So, when we think about Arthurian movies, the first thing we tend to think about are the pseudo-medieval shining plate armor, Knights of the Round Table, Camelot-style movies, such as Excalibur, John Boorman's Excalibur from 1981. What I want to talk about today is three movies that were made in the 21st century that much more take the Arthurian legend and place it in a post-Roman setting, where, in theory, the historical context for the Arthur stories, although if Carrie Sperring is watching, I promise I do not intend to talk about the idea that there is a genuine historical context for the Arthur stories. Unfortunately, other people do. The first of these movies is King Arthur from 2004, presented as being from the producer of Pirates of the Caribbean, i.e. Jerry Bruckheimer. So you can be sure that things will be blown up in the course of this movie. It's from the director is Antoine Fuqua, who had directed Training Day, and also the screenwriter is David Franzoni, who had written the original draft of Gladiator, and this is the movie that he made after he made Gladiator. This is a movie that does want to try and position itself in a historical Arthur context. So you begin with this opening credit about historians agree, which is nonsense in itself. I know lots of historians, and they're hard-pressed to get them to agree whether Shreddies is better breakfast cereal than Weetabix, let alone that the 15th century tale of King Arthur and his knights rose from a real hero. And recently discovered archaeological evidence certainly does not shed light on his true identity. And the movie immediately, in any case, goes on to drive a coach and horses through what we actually know about 5th century history in Britain, which is not very much. It is a movie in which there is a lot of shouting. They get Clive Owen to shout quite loudly, and they get Ray Winston to shout even more loudly. It's quite surprising that they didn't get this man involved in the movie. Ioan Gruffudd is in it. He doesn't shout very much, but he's very Welsh. And Keira Knightley plays the only female role of any significance, really. This is not a movie that passes the Bechdel test. She plays Queen Guinevere, but she plays a Queen Guinevere that is very closely based upon the imagination of what Queen Boudica, a queen from about 400 years previously, is like in the popular imagination. This is one of a set of 4 movies made in the first decade of the 21st century that feature Hadrian's Wall. So the basics of this story are that King Arthur is leader of a group of Sarmatian knights who have all been brought over from from Sarmatia, which is sort of the modern day Crimea, and the fact that they are variously Welsh, Danish, and Cockney Londoner is passed over and not worried about. They are sent north of the wall on a rescue mission by Bishop Germanus, a bishop who is a historical figure but is quite firmly dead by the time that the movie is set. And they are set to a villa far north of the wall to rescue Italian Senator Ken Stott, who plays his role with an accent not seen this side of a Cornetto advert. The movie very much wants to be a Western. It really tries very, very hard to be a Western. And so, in particular, this villa beyond the wall, what you're seeing is a cavalry unit going out to rescue homesteaders who are out living in Indian country. The threat, however, comes not from Indians, but from supposed Saxons, although they're very Viking-looking Saxons, including a somewhat grumpy-looking Stellan Skarsgård. On Arthur's side are the so-called Woads, the Britons, led by Merlin. Originally, they are hostile to Arthur's Romans, but then when Rome decides to leave, Merlin decides that Arthur should stay and help everybody out, which eventually he does. So I'm going to show you a clip now to give you a flavour of what this movie is like. If I can get this, of course, to work now. Stop sharing that. And there we go. I bet I shared that without the sound, so we'll show it you again. Although obviously anybody who could read Turkish would follow the subtitles.
Arthur. Wherever I go on this wretched island, I hear your name. Always half whispered, as if you were a god. All I see is flesh, blood. No more god than the creature you're sitting on.
Speak your terms, Saxon.
The Romans have left you. What are you fighting for?
I fight for a cause beyond Rome's or your understanding.
come to beg a truce. You should be on your knees.
I came to see your face, so that I alone may find you on the battlefield, and it would be good for you to mark my face, Saxon. For the next time you see it, it will be the last thing you see on this earth.
Finally, a man worth killing.
And now to go back to my slide protection. And King Arthur, for those who are interested, has a Game of Thrones score of 1. Clive Russell, the Blackfish in Game of Thrones, appears early on in the movie as father of Lancelot, living in a mud hut somewhere in Sarmatia. 3 years after King Arthur came out, we get The Last Legion. The Last Legion is sort of disguised Arthuriana. In early publicity about the Last Legion, it was very careful not to suggest that there was any connection with King Arthur at all. And the King Arthur connection is something that's sort of saved until a very final revelation at the very end of the movie. I should say that there are spoilers in this talk. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that at the beginning. But eventually, as the movie came close to release, the studio decided that they had no actual faith in the movie. Its release was delayed by a year, and when it went out without a press screening, which is generally a good sign that the studio thinks that this movie is rubbish. It was shown, so publicity posters in the immediate run-up to the release of the movie very much emphasised the King Arthur connection. I haven't got one here, but they said things like "before Arthur there was." It is the story of the last emperor of the Western Roman Empire, Romulus Augustulus, who is deposed and then rescued by a group of knights and heroes, including Colin Firth as Aurelius and Ashwara Rai as the Byzantine guard, an Indian in the service of the Byzantine Emperor Mira. They also team up with Ambrosinus, played by Obi Ben Kingsley. This movie very much wants to be Star Wars, and Kingsley very much plays the Obi-Wan Kenobi role, except that the movie never quite... It seems to be scared of going all the way down the fantasy route. So Kingsley's Ambrosinas does a lot of things that look like magic, but are explained away as tricks and was shown the workings. Here is Kingsley at work. So let's stop sharing. Different screen.
Romulus! Romulus!
For all you've done to my country, my Britannia, burn in hell!
Yes, but okay. So the bad guys in Last Legion are primarily the Goths. Kevin McKidd as Wolfilla. Interestingly enough, King Arthur had got Ray Stevenson as Sir Dagonet, and so these two movies between them have got each halves of the Varanus and Pullo team that characterized HBO's television series Rome. James Cosmo at the background there. Peter Mullen plays the historical Odoacer, the man who actually did overthrow Romulus Augustus, or he doesn't seem to have done anything other than give the poor lad a nice villa to live in and a pension. And also the other villain is Vortigern, who we saw, and I'll come back to in a minute. So fleeing the Goths, everybody goes to Britain. This involves climbing over mountains, which I suppose may actually be somewhere in the Alps. But this is showing the influence of Lord of the Rings and helicopter shots of small parties of people going over snow-clad mountains, which in fact all four of the Hadrian's Wall movies that we know we see. This is indeed a Hadrian's Wall movie, although we don't. I haven't put a slide in of Hadrian's Wall, but the final climax of the story takes place at Hadrian's Wall, which for some reason everybody, despite the fact that they've all approached from the continent and crossed over the channel and come up from the south, everybody ends up approaching Hadrian's Wall from the north. Either that or Hadrian's Wall has been put in backwards. But in any case, it is a Hadrian's Wall movie. The main villain, as you saw in Britain, is Vortigern, which is a variation on the name of Vortigern, who is a character who is known from historical sources of the what's happening in Britain at the end of the 5th century. He may or may not have ever existed. He gets tied into the Arthur legends, and by the end of the movie we find out that Ambrosianus is in fact Merlin, and that Romulus takes the name Pendragon, essentially becoming Uther Pendragon, and his son Arthur we see at the very end of the movie. Post-Roman versions of the Arthur story sort of drift away a little bit, but in 2011, that was the thing I was going to talk about, yes. One of the things about this movie is it can't really work out what it wants to be. It's based on an adult novel written by Valerio Massimo Manfredi. But because it's got 15-year-old Thomas Brodie Sangster in it, in a lead role, playing somebody who's actually only meant to be 13, it's never quite sure whether it wants to be an adult movie or a kids movie. And this is most clearly signified in the scene where Aurelius and Mira go to bed together, but they very carefully don't take any clothes off. It's got a Game of Thrones count score, however, of a massive 5. We get not just Jorah Mormont, but also Jeor Mormont as well. Alexander Siddig is in it, the King of Dawn, or the Prince of Dawn. Jojen Reed, of course, and also Sir Alistair Thorne is in it. Owen Teale is in the movie. A few years after Last Legion, we get Starz' television series Camelot, which is, again, Arthur in a post-Roman context. It's not actually set around the end of Roman Britain in the way that Last Legion and King Arthur are, but it's set in a Britain that is very much dominated by the remains of Rome. Stars somebody I have forgotten playing King Arthur, and Eva Green playing Morgan Le Fay. And the final movie I'm going to talk about here is King Arthur: Legend of the Sword. King Arthur: Legend of the Sword is a movie by Guy Ritchie, famous for Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, Snatch, Rock and Roller, most recently The Gentleman. Basically, lots and lots of highly stylized London gangster movies. King Arthur: Legend of the Sword is in some ways the richest of Ritchie movies you could imagine. I'm going to show you this clip that I hope will explain that. Stop the share. Share screen. Contab. Share audio. There we go.
You're going on a boat, all right. Just not the one you think.
What's all that about? Guess that's what you get when you don't pay up. Taking the kids now.
What's he got more planned up out here for?
Well, when you see the king, why don't you ask him?
What's that?
God save the king.
Excuse me, mate. Wait.
Leave it.
Excuse me. Behind you, pal. Yeah, mind your back, please.
What, pal? There's a line here. Go on.
As you were, mate.
All right, where do you want me?
Trigger, I think we got one here.
Bouncing on my knee. Where do you think I want ya? Hands on the hilt, stupid. Best thing, didn't have any teeth. Oi, both hands. I said both hands. Right, 10 digits. Round the blunt bit. Give it a tug. Left foot, right foot. Collect your brand. Back on the barge.
That's everything you know about him.
His people were quick to disappear. We got what information we could.
A lot of fingers in a lot of pies. Black legs in his pockets, too.
These adjustable.
Right, so you can see there, as I said, very much the richest of Ritchie movies. So it's got a lot of Ritchie's tricks. You know, a footballer, in this case David Beckham. Lots of people being geezers. There's lots of jump cuts left, right, and centre. Charlie Hunnam's Arthur is somebody who has escaped from the destruction of Camelot and the death of his father Uther, played by Eric Bana, who's probably very glad he's not in more of the movie. And rather like Moses, Arthur floats down the Thames and is then found by a bunch of prostitutes who raise him in their house, and he becomes a sort of a bit of a fixer for the house of prostitutes until his true destiny comes calling. Much of it takes place in London, although they call it Londinium. And this is a London, although nobody specifically mentions Rome, this is a London that's very much dominated by Roman remains. You can see this sort of big stone bridge here, but there's a ruined Colosseum lying around. A lot of the architecture, you can see just in the distance, there's a big Roman style temple. A lot of the architecture is very much Roman in its form. And this is true both of Londinium and indeed of Camelot. Yeah, you can see a small ruined theatre just in the near foreground here. It is, however, very much fantasy movie. It's a fantasy version of Dark Ages London. So it's a fantasy version that not only has Vikings wandering around, as you can see in the top left, but there's also a Chinese martial arts school, which you can see with George, who runs it, in the bottom right. You've also got a fantasy villain in Jude Law's King Vortigern, who is just chewing the scenery like there's no tomorrow. Like it's full of vitamin D, and there's overt magic in this. There's clear fantasy elements. There's enormous giant elephants for reasons which are not made entirely clear, but they are there. It's got a Game of Thrones score only of 2, unfortunately. Littlefinger and Roose Bolton. But it also has a Merlin score of 1. Merlin, for those of you who don't know, was a television series of the early 2010s that again retold the story of Arthur in but very much in a sort of quasi-medieval way. But the actress who plays Morgana in Merlin turns up in Legend of the Sword as Vortigern's wife, whom he sacrifices to a bunch of snake demons. So those are the 3 movies I was really going to talk about. There have been other Arthurian movies in the sort of Roman bracket. Arthur and Merlin, which presents Arthur and Merlin very much in a sort of Celtic context. Pendragon, we'll leave Pendragon Sword of his father out for a moment. King Arthur Excalibur Rising, which looks a bit quasi-medieval, but is supposedly set in 250 AD. And then Pendragon Sword of his father, which is a movie I haven't seen. It is a quite remarkable creation. It is a production of Burns Family Studios. It is directed by Chad Burns. It stars Aaron Burns, Nick Burns, Marilyn Burns, and Andy Burns. Aaron Burns and Marilyn Burns provide the music. It is edited by Nicholas Burns. And the screenplay is by the Burns Family Studios. The Burns, as far as I can see, the Burns are independent Christian filmmakers, and this is a bit of Christian propaganda. I will have to watch that at some point, and perhaps at a future convention I can report on it. I often get asked when I've done these things, what's my favourite Arthurian movie? I have to say it's not any of these 3. Arthur, the 2004 King Arthur is a quite absurd movie. It's just ridiculous all the way through. Last Legion is perhaps less ridiculous, but it's not really good particularly. It is hobbled by the fact that it can't decide whether it wants to be a movie for grown-ups or for kids. And King Arthur Legend of the Sword is just really quite silly all the way through. For the moment you get your first giant elephant, which you get within about first 15 seconds of the movie. And so I just fall back on the usual favourites. This is clearly the best version of the King Arthur legend that has ever been, or indeed will ever be, filmed. And I didn't turn the sound on again. Did I? No, I did not turn the sound on. And that's the end. Thank you very much for your attention. Oh, okay. So I didn't see the didn't see that. It was Holy Grail, Pat. I'm just filling in time now. Is there anybody still out there? Evidently so. I haven't read Bradshaw Island of Ghosts. The Salmation theory is a theory that has been kicking around for a while, and it's nonsense, basically. But it's been kicking around. No, I haven't, but I'm aware of it. And that's because that's quite recent, isn't it? That's on my list of things I ought to get around to having a look at. Although my recollection of Cursed is that it's quasi-medieval rather than post-Roman. Mm. Well, I haven't seen Vikings either, so there's just no good convincing evidence for it. A lot of people have brought a lot of things together in ways that don't really make any sense. Right, bye bye then, everybody. Thank you for your attention. I hope you enjoyed the talk. I'll hope to see some of you around in other bits of the conference. Fingerus puppetus. He is. He's very definitely Roman. Bye bye.